Hello and welcome to Raider HQ After Dark. I'm your host Raider, and in this video what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be talking about one of the most inaccurately completed documents in the entire VA system. So the VA form 20-0995, the supplemental claim form, is one of the single most inaccurately completed documents in the entire process. So I'm going to be talking about how to complete this document in both the physical format on the PDF and via the online. So I took some screenshots. I did a mock supplemental claim for myself. And so I took some screenshots to help you guys understand how to fill it out. And I'm going to point out some discrepancies. Okay. There are some clear discrepancies that I want to front load in this video. And I'll start out by trying to share my screen. I've got a lot of stuff going on here, so we're going to bear with me while I try to make it work. So this is the supplemental claim. This is the PDF for the supplemental claim. And I want to point out this point right here. And I'm going to supplemental claims. Okay. You use this form to submit a supplemental claim of the decision you received that you disagree with. This is the part where the physical claims form and the online form do not line up, because you are supposed to, in both medias, in the physical one and in the online one, you are supposed to identify what it is that you are disagreeing with. However, the online submission for supplemental claims does not give you the opportunity to actually report what it is that you're disagreeing with. So that lowers the possibility for your online supplemental claim to be reviewed the way you want it to be reviewed, because there's a lot of different things that can happen here. Supplemental claims can typically be a disagreement, right? Because that's what it is. You're disagreeing with something. But there's typically four disagreements that are at issue in any given time. So if the condition's never been service connected before, then you are disagreeing with that fact. You think it should be. So that's the first disagreement that you could have. That's the majority of the disagreement that people have. And I have mentioned these on other videos, so we are kind of revisiting some issues. The second thing is, I disagree with the exam I was given. It was insufficient. They didn't use the ganometer. They didn't have me do my pulmonary function tests, which are required for the, for the asthma. So that's the second one, is that you make a formal disagreement with, with the examination process. Something was off about it. Number three, you disagree with the evaluation that the rater assigned to you. Either the laws, rules, regulations were not applied effectively, and you disagree with the fact that you were given, let's say, 50% instead of 70%. That's a valid disagreement. The fourth one is a disagreement that cannot be made, and it's typically denied, and that's a disagreement with the effective date. The effective date has its own process for how it is to be disagreed. You would have to cite a clear and unmistakable error because the adjudication has already happened. So you can't undo it unless you file a clear and unmistakable error. And I also gave alternative ways that you can do it by doing a higher level review and having them just kind of raise it to issue. But now the main point in this is that sometimes you don't just have one previous denial for the condition that we're talking about. So you might have like your left knee was denied. Well, or like, let's say your left knee was granted, but it was denied an increase. You have like maybe 3 or 4 prior rating decisions for your knee. And it is, if you don't tell us which rating decision that you're calling into question, the VSR and rater will assume it is the most recent one. They will assume that. So if that's not your intention, you need to make your intention, very, very clear. And I'm going to say that this information provided on this particular forms, pre-actual claim form information, is really good. You should read this. This is very, very accurate, very, very helpful. But when we come down, The purpose of this section is to identify in item 21. So later down in item 21, and we'll get to that, each issue decided by the VA that you would like to have reviewed. Okay, so it's basically just telling you, look, you need to tell us what specifically, which conditions you're disagreeing with. And right here, you should also enter the date of the VA's decision notice letter for each issue, if possible. And then, they want, for those issues that do not list on this form, you will still need to have 1 year, yada, yada, yada. But you have to explain what it is. Like up at the top, you have to explain what you're disagreeing with. So you have to give us the date of the decision that's in question and what you disagree with. Now, I have almost never seen somebody that actually explained what they disagreed with. Now, if it was never service connected and you want it to be, that's easy. But there are times whenever individuals, and this is where my increase versus supplemental claim kind of dispute comes into play, where I've talked about why some people do supplemental claims and it's not appropriate because they want to claim for increase, so they should do an increase. Telling us what you want to have done can help us to not make assumptions, because when the VSR and the rater make assumptions, they're making them not to your advantage. Typically, they are not. Sorry, the dogs were being bad. So yeah, if you don't inform the rater as to what rating decision that you want to have reviewed, they'll assume it's the newest one. If you don't tell the rater what it is that you disagree with, their imagination becomes your reality. So they will pick what it is. They do not have to clarify your intent. So they're not going to call you and say, hey, could you ask the veteran what it is that they're disagreeing with? They're just going to make their assumption. Okay. So please keep that in mind. This is a cautionary tale, and this video is going to be very long. Now, the other section here, section 5, is very, very important, because this is what we need to talk about for like new and relevant evidence, because that is a component of the sufficiency of the supplemental claim. A supplemental claim is not sufficient and will not get further development actions like examinations in some instances, stuff like that, unless there's relevant evidence. Now, and I have said this in other videos, if your condition is service connected and you disagree with a prior decision for something that is service connected, you should not get a new examination. What the rater should default to is, we think that you disagree with the evaluation that you were given, the percentage that you were given. So what the rater does is they reevaluate your prior rating decision that and if you don't say anything, it's going to be the most recent one, and it will waste your time. It will waste everyone else's time if that's not what your intention was. So I would go through and read this relevant evidence section. And whenever you submit, my advice is always to take the relevant evidence, the new and relevant evidence that you have, and you should always take that out and separately upload it with your claim. Like at the same time that you submit your claim, you should submit that separately, but at the same day, same time as your claim. If you're submitting it in paper copy format, then you should print out the relevant evidence that proves or disproves a matter at issue, right? I say that a lot, but it's right here. It's for the evidence to be relevant, it has to prove or disprove a matter at issue. Most of the time, it doesn't disprove anything, it proves something. So what issue are they talking about? Well, on your claim, like this mostly applies to previously denied conditions. You would go back to your prior rating decisions and you would look at your favorable findings. Typically, all theories for service connection have 3 elements. And the first element is current diagnosis or current symptoms, and the second element is a little bit different depending on what theory we're talking about. So it kind of changes depending on the theory. Sorry, the dogs are being bad again. So Element 2 changes depending on what theory you're kind of talking about. So in the case of like direct service connection theory, it would be in-service treatment, in-service event, in-service diagnosis. If it's a secondary condition, then it would be a service-connected condition. But typically, element 2 always relates back to service in the majority of cases. Element 3 is your medical link between element 1 and element 2. Now, in the case of presumptive conditions, that element 3 is already established. So element 3, is satisfied already on its face because it's a presumptive condition, as long as you meet elements 1 and 2. So proving or disproving a matter at issue for the, things that haven't been that have been previously denied is simply, if you were denied because you don't have a current diagnosis, then the rater is expecting to see a current diagnosis in order for there to be new and relevant evidence that prove that you should be service connected. So just keep that in mind, that this is a requirement for sufficiency. If you do not have new and relevant evidence, then your claim is going to be denied on its face, because if you're missing one of the elements, there's no way to grant. Now, here we go. So we're scrolling down, more stuff. So, okay. First things first, expiration date. We want to make sure that the form that you are filling out, if you're doing the the paper copy and sending it in, you want to make sure that the expiration date is accurate. If it's not, then it can cause a delay in your claim to have you submit on a valid form. It depends on how old it is, to be honest with you, because sometimes we'll take expired forms. Now, also, if you are submitting this via an outreach event, you need to make sure that they stamp the actual form, because that's going to be your effective date potentially under 38 CFR 3.2501. This date matters, so just keep that in mind. Now, similar to the 526EZ form, you need to tell us what benefit you're talking about. If your previous denial, or if your previous rating decision that you have some kind of issue with is related to compensation, then you check compensation. If it's due to education, then you check education. It's just, most of the time for what I'm talking about, we're going to be talking about compensation. Now, veterans information, you fill all this out. Now, similar to my other videos, I always say go with the social security number. Service number is problematic at best. It's easier to just pull up people's socials. We don't need any of this unless it's related to an insurance policy. You don't necessarily need it. Date of birth is required. Now, if you'll remember back on a different video I had, I was talking about, sufficiency, claim form sufficiency. So you need to make sure that you are filling in as much of this as humanly possible, and that it's accurate. Because your address is going to be where they're going, if you do have to go to an exam, in the unlikely prospect of that, then they will judge it based upon your mailing address. Telephone is required. It should not be optional, because we have to call you. If you do need an exam, we need to call you. If we can't call you, then your claim goes nowhere. And then we talk about the claimant's ID. If different than the veteran, then you'd fill this out, what the relationship is. This is for like a substitution of claimant at times. You'll see that if the veteran passed away during, while a claim was still open, then a family member can do a substitution of claimant request. And then they can they can basically be a surrogate to the client, to the veteran in filing the supplemental claim. Now, this down here is the date of the form. It, matters sometimes. This is the form number. And we're back. Sorry, Naughty Dog Palooza. So happening. So yeah, this is the claim form number up here. Section 3 is for homeless information. Now, this will be priority processing if this is true. So fill this out accurately. Fill out the areas as needed. And then we come here to section 4. Issues for the supplemental claim. You must list each issue decided by the VA that you would like the VA to review as part of your supplemental claim. Note, refer to your decision notices for each and identify the date of the decision. So what I usually see here is left leg. This is not helpful. You're giving the rater and the VSR just the ability to just do nonsense. And I talked about this in the other videos about how the VSRs will get you a new exam. Sometimes the new exam is not helpful to your claim. Sometimes it doesn't help anything at all except to make the rater upset because the rater has to do two separate rating decisions and then Frankenstein them together. Now, this is where you put the date of the decision. Now, this is important. If you have multiple decisions that you would like to have reviewed, then put them in here. You know, like dated, you know, and then write something in here. I disagree with the percent I was given. My records show I should be 70%, and specify what records. My VA records for treatment show, nope, that's not it. Show I should be 70% due to this thing right here. Now, if you need more space, take more space. See how it cut that off? So what you would do is you would just go cut and then paste. And then you have to do that a few times, but this is annoying. Now, if you do that, like, because these get scanned in, we can't actually see anything that's like, you know, when it wraps around and goes down here and you see partial stuff, we can't see that. It's better if you handwrite this if you've got decent handwriting. Put your dates in here, you know, like whatever it is. I mean, put in a primary date. And then, you know, but we need to see why what you're disagreeing with. This helps your claim. It does. It honestly helps your claim. It reduces the ability of the VSR to, like, if you fill this out accurately and tell us what you want, like, I don't need a new exam would be helpful. Just because that way the rater doesn't have to Frankenstein at the end two separate rating decisions. One for the previously denied condition, we would review that in real time, and then we would look at the new examination if the VSR gets you one, which they shouldn't, but they do because they chase points. But okay. So this is a very important facet of the supplemental claim, is explaining everything. Now, new and relevant evidence, this is where, you know, you talk about this. Where are we getting this evidence from? So you have to basically, this is the duty to assist. These are for any federal records that you don't have access to or that you want us to get. So you would just, you know, click here for whatever it is, military treatment facilities. It's important to note that this right here means that if you went to, like, if you sought treatment as a veteran post-service at a military facility, like a military base, then that's what this means. It doesn't mean in-service DOD treatment. It means post-service DOD treatment. But yeah, you would just follow this. This talks about the need for a VA form, a release of information form, and a general release medical provider form. So basically the first form is the release of information form. The second form is who you give us permission to get from. They talk about the fact that you should probably get these forms from VA.gov at VA forms, and you should probably fill them out and submit them with your claim. Makes 1,000% sense. Now, if you want, like if you're getting like VA medical records and whatnot, you want to just say here, you know, VA Rater HQ, Medical Center, and then whatever dates and times. If you put a date of treatment, make sure that it's the initial date of treatment, because sometimes the evidence gatherers can be a little bit, well, actually, no, the computer's doing it now. So, I mean, the evidence gatherers don't matter. They're going to, if it's a VA medical center, the claims process the way it is now, the system will automatically pull the Capri records and upload them. So it doesn't really matter. These are mostly for other facilities, but you can put whatever you want in here. The 5103 notice. So the 5103 notice is basically telling you that since the last time we had a rating decision and you're doing a supplemental claim, we're notifying you that you can use, or you can put new evidence into your claim, is kind of what, I mean, that's a watered down version of what the 5103 notice is. It basically advises you that you can add new evidence to the process. So, and up above, it kind of explains the 5103 process, but you have to come down here and certify. If you say no to this, then the VA is going to take 30 days and mail you one and not take any action until after the 30 days has resolved. If you are waiting on evidence and for whatever reason submitted a claim and you are waiting on specific evidence, I might check no on this. So that way you can give yourself 30 days to wait, because they won't order exams if exams are needed unless the 5103 notice is satisfied. Now, here's a key point. If your POA, power of attorney, if your VSO signs this form for you, even if they mark yes, you're still going to get a 5103 notice unless the 5103 notice is satisfied by something else. Like, the way that we can satisfy a 5103 notice, like you having been given it, is if you had a rating decision within the last year. Then that technically means you have been given or notified of the 5103 requirements. I don't know. So, and then we talk about to notify Veterans Administration about certain upcoming events during the claims. Pardon me. This is a thing, I don't know, this doesn't matter to me, but you would consent, I guess, if you want to. So this is the part where the veteran signs. So here's the veteran's signature, and here's the witnesses, which don't need to be a thing. And then we have alternative signers, and then we have the POA. So if the POA signs this and the veteran didn't sign it, and there's no other way to satisfy the 5103 notification, then the claim will be delayed by 30 days. You see this a lot with attorneys. Attorneys will sign this, and then for whatever reason, and then they don't, and then it just delays the claim for 30 days. It's kind of weird. So this is the paper copy version of it. And I kind of ran through it, but I'm already at 23 minutes and I'm not even actually to the important stuff. So I attempted to actually do an online claim for myself. So you just go to VA.gov. I'm going to show you how to file a supplemental claim online. And I'm going to also discuss with you the fact that the whole disclosing what you disagree with part of it is not included in the online claim. So it's not helpful. They need to update this. But anyway, here is a screenshot after I got onto VA.gov. I went to their search engine and I just said supplemental claim. And I actually just clicked on this, file a supplemental claim with new evidence. Okay, so then it took me to this screen and it says, how do I file a supplemental claim? And then it's got this green arrow that says, would you like to file a supplemental claim online? Sure. So I clicked on that. And then this is where you get to distinguish what kind of claim that you're claiming for. So it just breaks it up into disability compensation and then everything else. So I clicked on disability compensation. And then and keep in mind, these aren't slide for slide. There's some slides in there that I couldn't actually, I'd be here forever, but there's some like just nonsense slides. So this is where you just click on start your claim. And the respondent's burden is 15 minutes. It takes about 15 minutes. And then this acts as kind of the expiration date, 5/31/27. I don't know what that is, but sure. And then we go here we actually click on it, and now we're starting to file a supplemental claim. So this is where it kind of talks about, it educates you about the supplemental claims process. It kind of tells you about intent to files, effective dates. It starts to give you that information in this section 1 of 5. Okay, then you go here, and then you have to confirm all of your personal information. I am not doing that on screen with you. So this is where you would do it. So if all your stuff matches up, then you hit OK and go to the next one. And then it says, file a supplemental claim. Are you experiencing homelessness? So it's kind of following the same track as the physical claims form does, in that it wants your personal information up front, where you live, what your name is, all that stuff. Then it moves on to the homeless question. Now, this is just for priority processing. If you are homeless, then it will ask you all of the relevant homeless questions. I check no. And then you come to this section where you get to actually select disabilities that you have, and you can select them. Now, they can be previously denied. They can be service connected. Like in this instance, this is 100% for mental health, or whatever, 70% for mental health. And you would actually just check the box that you want. You can check multiple boxes. So if you have multiple disabilities that you want to have disputed or that you disagree with, you check all the boxes. You don't do one of these individually for each one. It's not a solo event. It's check everything that matters. Oops. And then we go to step 2, issues for review. So this is where it's educating you about the differences between, like the different appeals process, the supplemental claim, all this stuff. So it kind of helps you with that. And then we come here to this one, and we're going to have to pause and reload all the new slides. And we're back. Okay. So this next section, we transition into what new and relevant evidence do you have? Or what new and relevant evidence do you want us to acquire? So this is where, it acts like a 4142A form. This is like this private healthcare provider box down here indicates to the actual, computer system that you want you want some kind of private medical record. So it'll ask you questions based upon that. Some of this is normal. Once again, military treatment facilities are for treatment after you have discharged from service. I can't stress that enough, because a lot of people end up getting their STRs again for some reason. I don't know. So let's move on. So section 3, new and relevant evidence. So here we go. You want us to get your VA medical records or military health records. Now, I find this really weird, especially if you're like a National Guardsman or reservist. If you have, like, let's say a new active duty period of time, you would say yes to this. You would say, yes, I want you to get my new military records. Now, it'll say, where do you want to get them from? So what you would talk about is, you would talk about like the unit that you were in for active duty, and you would kind of assign that and let the VSR know, who's going to do like a HAMES request or PIES request. Let them know that you need to have your new service treatment records gathered. Now, if you're somebody that just had active duty and it was a long time ago, you might not need this. So you might just say, I do not need my VA. Well, you'll want the VA records. But what's weird is that the current process for claims processing is now your VA medical records get automatically uploaded with each claim that is cested or created. So you can just say yes to this, and then it'll prompt you to fill additional things out. So If no, if your evidence is private, we will get to that. So let's move on. So VA, what VA military facility? This is for post-service. So this is military treatment facility. This is the name of the facility post-service that you want. Or like I said, if you're a National Guard or reservist and you've had a new active duty period and you receive treatment during that time, then it's whatever that might be. Then this goes, what conditions are you being treated for at that location? Just select which ones that you're being treated. And then you would just put in the date, or I don't have a date. If you have multiple treatment facilities, you will add another VA treatment location at the bottom. And then we're moving on. So we come back here to new and relevant evidence. Now it wants to talk to you about your private non-VA provider or VA vet center records. Vet center, they're not part of the VA, so we have to have special permission to get them. We require a, it has its own process. But like, let's say you have a private provider. I like this note section down here, and this is so much different than the paper copy in that it says that DBQs that are filled out by a private non-VA provider are also considered part of your medical record. So we can gather those too. And then you would just say yes or no. If you say yes, then it will prompt you to do the 4142A forms and to get that information. So this right here, authorized to release, this is basically your HIPAA compliance information. This is a really long page. At the end of it, you have to certify that, yes, I understand, because it's basically telling you that the VA will release your information and, well, the VA will only keep the release of information on file for 12 months. And they'll only use it when necessary. But the problem with this is, and there's a later slide on it. Let me go to the later slide for it. So then once you acknowledge that, you come here to this particular screen that says, do you want a limited consent for the information requested? So you can actually have, if you don't say anything, then it's a one-time situation. Or if you say, hey, look, I'm going to give you permission to gather this evidence for the next year. Then what happens is they take you to this next screen, and then they say, hey, look, for your limited request, tell us how you want to limit our access to this medical information. And I wrote in here, this box is to assign a limit to when and how the VA can get your records. Although, and this is true, even if you do provide future dates, or if you say you guys can keep pulling this as much as you want, the VSRs will still send you a brand new 4142 and 4142A form in the future if you submit another claim and you provide medical, if you provide a new, like any kind of new medical evidence from a private provider. And the reason why they do that is because if we assume that you don't have new records from a new person, that would be bad. That's not us doing the duty to assist. So the reason why they send you a new 4142 and 4142 alpha form is because they want to make sure that you don't have any kind of non-previously disclosed medical records that you would like us to get. So essentially, even if you do give us limited medical access for a longer period of time, it's as if you never did. We're still going to ask you every single time. It's just the VSR is going to do that because they're always going to be in fear that they get a quality review, because QRT will go, how did you know that they didn't have any new records? How did you know that? Show me where you knew that. And they won't be able to, so they just do it to cut, CYOA. All right, this next one's big, and it's also hard to read. So this is where you get to file your supplemental claim, new and relevant evidence. What location should we request your private provider? So this is where you get to list all your private providers, the dates of service, all that stuff. You can add here in this green little arrow down at the bottom, and I'm sorry, I know that's horrible to read, and I can't make it bigger, But you would add more providers with that green little arrow down at the bottom. When you're done, you click continue. But keep in mind, your information that you put up here for the name, address, the location of the provider has to be accurate. If it's not accurate, then the private contractor that pulls these records will not be able to gain access to it, and you will not be notified that they didn't get these records, because essentially it is up to you to submit them to us. The VA just does this as a courtesy, as part of the duty to assist. So just keep that in mind, please. And then this last one here, do you want to upload evidence to support your claim? Now, this is the most important thing, okay? Because this is what they don't tell you. And I don't know if you see the screen right here, but this is pretty bland. There isn't nothing here to advise you that you should probably submit a VA form 21-4138, and you should tell us what you are disagreeing with for each specific condition, what the date is. You should explain yourself. But this is where you upload evidence. But one of the key points of evidence that's not identified the same way it is on the paper form or on the PDF is that you need to tell us what it is you disagree with. Because if not, you're going to leave it up to the imagination of the VSR and the rater. Hold on just one second. I'm going to load some more slides. And through the power of editing, we're back. So yeah, so this is where you would upload evidence. It will take you to an evidence section where you just upload PDFs. You want to make sure that even if you think that we have access to it, I would still upload everything. If your condition that you're disagreeing with or your disability, if you are using some of the evidence from the prior denial, you should re-upload that with this claim, because the VSRs and sometimes the raters have a bad habit of not going back in time and reviewing the evidence that was true back then. So if you, the most common thing that I see a lot of the time is, hey, look, you denied me for missing element 2, no in-service treatment. However, here is my STRs that show I received 6 months worth of treatment for my left knee. You guys just missed it. What's going on? It's good to resubmit that evidence with your claim. So just make sure that you upload all your evidence new and relevant. If you upload nothing, it's not a sufficient claim. It's not a substantially complete claim, and it will be instantly denied. Or it will actually not even be denied. It'll be just kicked back to you as insufficient, or it'll be kicked back to you as being insufficient. Incomplete application. That's what I'm looking for. Incomplete application. Sorry, it's been a day. File for a supplemental claim. Okay, so upload your supporting evidence. This is where you get to upload it, like I was talking about. So it gives you the boundaries of what it takes, like the maximum file width, height, the size, the type. Just make sure that you follow, color within the lines, guys. And then we move on here to file a supplemental claim on a 0995 form. New and relevant evidence. VA location. This is a summary section. So this is a summary of everything that you've submitted for you to review. If you notice that something is not right on here, you go to edit it, and then it takes you back in time to where you can add, remove, change, whatever you need to do on this. But this is basically telling you this is the final answer on your new and relevant evidence. Is this all you've got? And you need to, if you're missing something, you need to add it. And then we come here to the VHA indicator. Would you like to view an option for an indicator if your claim is related? So this right here, I don't know what this is in reference to, but if you do not have military sexual trauma, then you would say no on this. And then we're going to add the review application. So this is where each section gets reviewed. You can open it up. Once you're done here, you would submit the application. And then finally, I wanted to just say that currently the VA is estimating that it takes about 88.2 days on average to complete claims that were submitted in September, which is pretty good. I mean, that's not bad. That's really fast. And I think a lot of the fast aspect to that has to do with the automation of STRs, making it just quicker for making the whole process quicker. I think that automation really helped. But anyway, that's kind of all I want to talk to you about today in this one. But if you want a summary of what I was kind of going with, is that we need to make sure that when you're doing an online claim, that you tell us what it is that you are disagreeing with in the prior rating decision, and also name the conditions, the date of the decision, and what you disagree with. Those three things need to happen. If they don't happen, then the odds of you potentially getting what you are asking for go down drastically depending on what you're asking for. So that's about all I got for you today. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Raider out.